Get passed around. For any of you who don't know, I'm a fish biologist. I work at the Sandusky Division of Wildlife office. I specifically get to work with the Sport Harvest, our sport creel program, angler survey program. Bobby Johns was one of our creel survey clerks this year. He got to do the tributary estimates, tributary survey. But I also work with commercial harvest, and of course I get to work with my co-workers on the trawl survey, gillnet survey. It's a real fun job. It's a good mix of field work and office work. I'm never stuck in an office, and I'm not stuck on the lake 200 days a year either, so it's a nice mix. If you haven't heard it already, we're proposing new regulations, and it is for both perch and walleye. It's not walleye only. If you followed regulations and the quota and everything that's gone on the last few years, you know that we've been doing a lot of reacting instead of having things in place. Every year the quota is announced. If it's lower than we thought, we're scrambling to try to drop a limit so we stay within our quota. And we've also had this situation this past year where the quota was higher than we expected for perch, and we didn't react quick enough to raise the limit back up. It's this bad cycle of a quota being announced in March and having a process that takes 6 to 8 months to change a limit without getting a letter from the governors making it official. We've been asked not to go that route, and put it lightly. So what we want to do is we want to put something in place that we don't have to guess what the quota is a year ahead of time to start the process to change a limit for the next year. We want something in place that, based on a quota, that sets the limit. So we'll go cut right to the chase. The one that has a picture of the two fish on it with the tables on it, we proposed, and this was already presented at an open house, and it's still in the process of being either accepted or declined as law. I've got a feeling it's going to go through, but it is not official yet. It still could be shot down. But basically, we set up levels of quota. There's one table for walleye, one table for perch. If you want to look at the walleye first, it's the simplest. We've had a quota of 1 million fish or more recently for walleye in Ohio. That might not be the case in the near future. We've had poor enough reproduction and it might drop below 1 million fish in Ohio waters of Lake Erie. If that happens, there's a real possibility we could go over quota. And that's our responsibility as managers to stay within that quota or the whole system falls apart. But as I said, we don't want to be in this having to change the law every year to change the limit. So we propose this table. If our Ohio quota is over 950,000 walleye, nothing changes. The quota will be announced on March 1st, or the end of March. It happens. It'll be announced at the end of March. On May 1st, the 6 and 4 will officially be the limit. 6 May through February, 4 the next March, April, and then that next May, it'll be dependent on that year's quota announced. And this table will be law, so we don't have to change the limit in law every year. So this year, let's say this year it does end up being maybe 875,000 fish, the lowest we've had in a long time. That may or may not be the case, but if it is, if at the end of March an 875,000 Ohio walleye quota is announced, it'll be a 5-bag limit for the summer season, and it'll still be 4 that following March and April. So it's all clear cut, it's right there. When the quota is announced, you know what your bag limit is as of May 1. Go ahead, Mike.
Is that going to be in any kind of given time to print out?
So believe it or not, and this drives me insane, but one of our biggest hurdles to this in the past, we wanted to go to this. This isn't something we just came up with overnight. Biggest hurdle has been our little regulations brochure we print. We can't do that. We print a brochure in December and it gets sent out in February. That screws up the whole regulations brochure. Well, no kidding. We need to do something different. We need to accommodate it. So basically, the way I understand it, and I don't know if it's been fully determined yet, but I believe there's going to be a general statewide regulations brochure printed. And then the second that quota is announced, there's going to be a Lake Erie insert printed. So if you buy your regulations early, or you buy your license early, you'll get that generic statewide one. But the official Erie regulations won't be printed until that quota is announced in March. I imagine it'll be available like mid-April, but it'll be before May 1, obviously. Now that table's not gonna change. You know, if you hear from the meeting that we're announcing an 800,000 fish quota, you look at that table, you know what our limit is, but that will be printed. They'll print a specific one each year for here, and it'll be separate from the statewide brochure.
You know, they do that for waterfowl, right?
I know, they do it for waterfowl, they've got a complex hunting brochure, I mean, they fought us hard on having separate basin perch limits. We can't force that, we can't print that, come on, we can do what we want to do. It's different, it might be more difficult, but it can be done. So if you look at the perch is a little more complex, and take a step back, walleye are estimated lake-wide. They spawn in specific stocks in the spring, but after the spring, they migrate out all over the lake and even out of the lake. So there's one lake-wide walleye quota that's split up into the jurisdictions, Ohio, Ontario, Michigan. But with perch, we have a different system. With perch, we estimate each basin's population, and then there's a quota for each basin. So there's a Western Basin perch quota. Then that's split up within the basin between Michigan, Ohio, and Ontario. So we couldn't do the exact same thing for perch. It's not lake-wide. So basically, if you look at the perch levels, there's a west central, and an east central. So basically, it's Cranberry to Toledo is the west. Cranberry to Fairport is the west central. And Fairport to Conneaut is the east central as far as Ohio waters. If there's a 850,000 pound perch quota for Ohio in the western basin, we'd be at 30. That's the highest level. But in that same year, there could be a 600,000 pound quota in the west central. Well, in that case, it'd be 25 in the central that year. And then you might have over 800,000 pounds in the east central, so that put that at 30. So there's 3 separate quotas announced. You look at the western basin quota, and you look at the western basin side of the table. If you want to know what it is off per million, you look at the west central quota and the west central limit. It's not just one line across, it's each basin is independent, is what I'm trying to say. The good news for perches, we've had a little more consistent reproduction. We're actually headed up instead of down. I would be very surprised if all 3 basins weren't that highest level next year. I completely expect a 30 perch bagman in all 3 basins next year. Things happen. The model comes out different than we expected occasionally. There are no guarantees, but with perch, things are headed in the right direction. And I think we'll have the quota to have the 30 everywhere next year, which will be nice again. But if these go through the process, they'll be in law, and this paper you're holding, based on the announced quota, will tell you your bag limits every year for the near future. And we designed this wanting to keep it in place for a long time. We can adjust and adapt, but we're very comfortable with these quota levels and these bag limits until we have a significant change in the effort out there. Effort has been down, there's no doubt about it. And that's allowed us to be a little more liberal than maybe back in the 80s if we would have had to design this same table 20 years ago. But I hope we don't see a major change in effort anytime soon. It'd be nice to see it bump back up. But we're comfortable with this, and if it gets approved through the state process, this is what you're going to be looking at. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I can answer all the